welcome to another episode of View from Luffield. I'm only messing. I'm away this week. I'm going on a well-deserved family holiday. Phil Egan stepping in for me. He's going to do a mega job. He knows his stuff. Ant's going to waffle on about nonsense. There's going to be a lot of McLaren biased. Ignore it. Ferrari were the standout drivers and standout team all Monaco weekend. And also, the two-stop strategy was nonsense. Enjoy the episode.
Okay, hello, welcome to another episode of View from Luffield. You've just seen Phil Brown's excuses for not being here. I think it's absolutely appalling, putting his family holidays before...
Shocking behaviour.
Yeah, it is shocking behaviour before the podcast. But we have a more than capable stand-in, and I think this episode's actually going to be better because of that. So we'll have no more Ferrari nonsense. On a weekend they actually did well. So this is other Phil, this is Phil Egan.
How we doing? All right?
Firstly, Phil, thank you for stepping in.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure.
Also, Phil is the person responsible for doing all of our thumbnails and our artwork and the Ant v Phil artwork and all the rest of it, and our view, click, like, subscribe at the end of the video. All the stuff I'm not capable of doing. So firstly, thank you for...
it's a pleasure. That's great.
We have thanked you in the past, but thank you very much for doing that. Thank you very much for stepping in for Phil. And let's get into it. Let's get into Monaco. So, a couple of points from practice. We did have a few penalties. So Stroll was given a one-place penalty for basically driving into Leclerc.
Yeah, what was he doing?
Yeah.
what was he doing?
Who knows?
Why was he doing? What was that miscommunication from his team, or
There's moments,
does he just not know how to use his mirrors?
I know the mirrors are basically spoons, but and you can't see a great deal. But I mean, there's moments where you can blame the team for not doing a great deal, but I mean, you can. I'm sorry, stuff like that's inexcusable. Behrman got a 10-place grid penalty as well for overtaking under red flag conditions. I mean, that was an absolute sprint to outbrake and overtake. I mean, that was... We didn't see any of that in the race. What he did in practice, we didn't see any of it in the race. So, again, justified penalty for Behrman. And there was... Lewis Hamilton had to take basically a new front wing and a complete and utter back end of the car after his smash in FP3 as well. So they're the three things to consider from practice. Stroll will get a one-place grid penalty. Behrman will inevitably start at the back. Okay, so moving on to qualifying. Anything you want to pick up?
No.
I can see your first note.
Well, my first note was pointing out how good-looking Jenson Button looked over the weekend.
You won't get any argument from
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny in our house because both me and my wife have a crush on Jenson Button. It sounds a bit weird that, doesn't it? But I think every man has a man crush, and I think yours is the same.
100%.
And it's just, he was on point, really.
We've joked in the past about doing View from Luffield after dark, and I think...
That'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think we're verging onto a bit more of that with the Jenson Button discussion. Did like that. We had the C6 back again as well for yeah.
I don't get what you gain by it.
Especially at Monaco.
I don't get what you
when
gain
nobody wants to
by
use
it.
it. Anyway.
Slow corners. I don't know.
What I actually really like about this, just before we do carry on, is it's nice for someone not to be copying my notes.
Yeah, yeah, because I've made my own.
It's
notes
nice for someone to come prepared.
House.
Phil Brown, take notes. Literally, take notes. Phil has brought his own.
Phil Brown, I've made a note here. I thought Ferrari looked all right.
Yeah, Ferrari did look quick, pretty much in the entirety of qualifying, and it's interesting actually because they did say pre-weekend that they genuinely thought that they'd struggle. They thought they'd be really slow in the slow speed corners, and that would be against them. I actually thought in the entirety of the weekend, I thought that was nonsense. I thought Ferrari were really impressive, and it's a shame actually that Phil Brown isn't here.
Yeah,
because it
the
would
one
be
time that Ferrari have had a decent.
If you can look over my shoulder though, they are represented. Yeah, we have got some Ferrari stuff here for him, and that's as far as I'll go.
I mean, we'll throw it on the floor by the end of the episode. It don't need to be there, does it? We've got some new stuff as well, by the way. Just quickly.
Yes.
Some Williams, some Formula One, some Mercedes,
some more McLaren. See, we're trying to be,
well,
we're trying not to be papaya biased. We're not even wearing papaya. I mean, I'm wearing a McLaren t-shirt, but we're not.
Yeah, I try. I'm thought if I don't wear anything, then I won't.
be too biased. We'll try our hardest. We will try our hardest. The only sort of comments I've got from Q1, Stroll impeding Gasly coming out of the tunnel. Again, Lance Stroll. And I love the fact that he said he wasn't sure if it was Gasly or Leclerc, and then the Ferrari that was actually near him was Hamilton. I don't know if Lance Stroll was drunk Friday night coming into Saturday.
Just silly, isn't it? Just very, very silly. Antonelli.
Is that Q1 or Q?
So that was, are we Q1 there, are we?
Q1.
Yeah, Q1, Antonelli crashed.
It was Q2. Sorry, it was right
Q1.
then. Q1,
Yeah,
sorry,
Q1.
you're right, yeah, but he did get through to Q2, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
I mean, it was a horrible weekend in total by Mercedes, wasn't it? Absolutely horrible weekend.
And then just touching what you said on qualifying with like Oliver Birdman, obviously we'll talk about more as we go along, but he's had a stinker of a weekend, hasn't he? He's had an absolute stinker of a weekend.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I mean, I suppose if you know you're going to get a 10-place grid penalty, is it the time to maybe take a couple of gambles and stuff that you wouldn't necessarily do? Try something a little bit different if it doesn't work. I don't know this. I'm only playing devil's advocate that there could be a chance that he was so bad in qualifying because he was trying a different setup.
Nothing lost, nothing gained, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
He's starting from the back. He's starting literally P20.
And, he's not going to get into Q3, although Ocon did. We'll touch on that when we get to Q3. He's not going to get realistically into Q3, so therefore he's always going to start the race at the back of the grid. Again, I don't know this. I'm just spitballing. Is there a possibility that he tried a different strategy to try something a little bit different, and it just didn't work for Ollie Berman? Speaking of gambles that didn't work, Alpine trying to go through on the mediums. We did see a couple of teams do it. Specifically, Aston Martin did it in Imola to great effect. It was quite clear that the medium gamble didn't work this weekend in qualifying, but yet it felt like people kept trying to do it.
Yeah.
There was a couple of people in Science even did it in Q3 again. I know we're sort of dancing around different qualifying sessions, but it just felt like it wasn't working. But yet everybody tried to have a go with the mediums.
Strange.
Surely Alpine taught everybody the lesson in Q1. Didn't work for them.
It was it was good though. I did enjoy the quarter, but I think it's like anything with Monaco. You always enjoy Saturday better than Sunday. We'll go into Sunday afterwards. But
well, I have a theory on this, and I'm going to leave it to the very end of the video. I have a solution or a potential solution to fix Monaco, and it isn't the obvious. It isn't the obvious because I know the obvious isn't going to happen. It isn't the obvious.
No, I mean, how long are they contracted to stay at Monaco?
I mean,
another 3 years.
It will never go.
100%.
You're right. It just won't go. It's still the jewel in the crown and all the rest of it. But like I say, stay tuned because I will give my mental suggestion to fix Monaco, and I actually think it might work.
I made a note. So Q1, Max was struggling for grip towards the end of the laps.
Which was bizarre because for everybody else, my next note actually just to sort of tie into that. You're right, he did, but it was bizarre because the track really started to rubber in.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously they had the F2, which if anybody watched from what happened in the F2 race on the Saturday, there was an absolutely massive collision into turn 1. I think 10 cars were wiped out. In the Porsche Super Cup, there was a similar incident.
Yeah, I didn't see the F2, but I managed to see the Porsche Super Cup.
Yeah, and that was a similar one. And the amount of oil that leaked onto coming out of turn 1 up the hill. So the track did start to rubber in towards the end of Q1, and we saw a lot of people, times were just absolutely plummeting, except, weirdly enough, like you said, Verstappen seemed to be the only one who was struggling. But that was it for me, unless you've got any more comments from Q1.
No.
Sorry, yeah, you're right, the
Antonelli crash. It's been a funny weekend for Mercedes, I think. And I think as we go, I mean, as we go into the race, like there's a couple of decisions they made in the race, and I don't understand what they benefited.
I've got a big question to ask about Mercedes in the race, and again, we'll go on to that.
Where they benefited, there's no benefit to what they did in the race.
Well, they didn't do anything. Anyway, stay tuned for that because we will talk
very
about
strange,
that.
very, very strange.
But yeah, Antonelli's crash. I feel like he was just trying to. It was a little bit of naivety because on any other track you can get away with trying to get.
Yeah, I did say to my wife, I do think there's a little bit of an experience there.
Yeah, 100%.
Because he's to be a rookie in a Formula One season is probably pretty difficult, but then to be a rookie around because they are quite what's the word? They are quite unforgiving, the streets of Monaco. And if you one mistake and you're ruined, you're absolutely ruined.
And I think talking millimetres.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like literally the finest of margins, and he's just took it too much, and it's
completely ended
his qualifying session, which
100% drive,
which is then sort of. It sort of topped off because then as you go moving to Q2, George Russell, it turned out it was a battery issue, I think was it in the end, which brought them in at 14th and 15th, and
horrible start for Mercedes.
Start of a bad weekend for him.
Driver error for Antonelli, unfortunately for him. Nothing Russell could do. So as Q1 finished, then on the road we had Bortoletto in 16th. Behrman qualified 17th, but was obviously demoted to 20th because of his 10-place grid penalty. Gasly qualified 18th but would start the race 17th because of Behrman's penalty. Stroll's qualified 19th, got a penalty which knocked him to 20th, but Behrman's penalty overrode that, so Ben Stroll went back to 19th. And Colapinto qualified 20th, but then would start 18th because of the penalties of everybody else. So, yeah, as I said, Bortoletto, Behrman, Gasly, Stroll.
I'm not going to lie, you've completely lost me there.
Yeah, it wouldn't start that way. That's how they qualified.
There's too much went on there. That's just ridiculous, isn't it?
And for Phil Brown, I know you'll be watching this, I know you'll be listening to this, you'll watch it at some point on your holiday. Bortoletto out-qualified Behrman again. Just going to throw it out there. And then we won't mention the race.
I was just going to say, and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
To that point.
There was as well just another thing on Q1 actually, which wasn't picked up again until later on in the qualifying, and after qualifying there was a penalty given. Right at the end of Q1 was the incident where Hamilton got done for impeding Verstappen. Now,
yeah, that's silly.
By who? What are you saying? Who's silly?
Well, I think he's got mixed messages from his team.
What? Yeah, 100%.
100% message. Because I thought, let me just try and recap my head. So basically, Verstappen, I'll be honest, I can't name all the corners and what. You know, you've got Silverstone, you've got Lovefield.
Yeah,
we can do all that. But
I'm glad you did that.
That was pure coincidence, by the way. So he's going up the hill, wasn't he?
Yes.
And then
it's a left-hander.
Yes,
it's a blind
left hand, and he's got the radio message to say that Verstappen's doing a flying lap. So Lewis has pulled to the left-hand side. Then he got told that Verstappen is slowing down. So Lewis is then pulled back onto the racing line to then take the left-hand turn easier, I assume.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And then Verstappen hadn't slowed down. So why have Ferrari then said, you know, Verstappen's slowing down? Do their timing screens not work, or do they?
And the other thing is as well, I mean...
Or is it... I mean, I understand human error.
Yeah.
I do understand that, but it's a bit mad.
That, for me, is it's one of them things. If Ferrari... Because I'm going to show a graphic on this, so if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see my take on this in a moment, and I've drawn some lines to show what I think. If...
You can draw?
The one... I can, yeah.
Wow.
The one thing with it, for me, is... So Hamilton's on the left-hand side. Now, going into that corner, the racing line is the left-hand side. And as we said, it's a blind corner. So in reality, if Hamilton is going to move out of the way for Verstappen, he needs to go as far right as he possibly can.
Oh, sorry, I've got it the wrong way.
So you're coming...
Sorry. Yeah. So, the racing line's the left and not the right.
Yeah, so you zigzag up the hill and you try and stay as straight as you possibly can. So you'll be as close as you can to the walls on both the left and right-hand side, coming up that straight. So you want to keep it straight, obviously, to keep high speed. When you get into that corner, you want to take a left in as much as you can and then come out and hug as much as the right, but not going too far to that wall because you've then got the right-hander towards the downhill off-camber corner. So if Hamilton's going to move out of the way, he wants to get to the right so Verstappen can take that left-hand line. The fact that Ferrari have told him that he's on a slow lap means Hamilton hasn't then bothered to try and get out of the way because he doesn't think he has to. The one thing for me with that is what Ferrari should do is if they're not, because they're obviously not sure, they've gone from saying Verstappen's on a flyer to Verstappen slowing down. Yeah. If they're not sure, for me, what they should do is almost just stick with Verstappen's on a flyer because Hamilton's not.
Yeah.
So if Hamilton moves straight as far over to that right-hand side as he possibly can, and Verstappen isn't on a flyer and doesn't overtake him, then Hamilton's not lost anything because he's on an in-lap at that point anyway. So there's nothing lost. Telling him that Verstappen's slowing down to not to worry then means Hamilton doesn't have to get out of the way. Yeah. So it's a Ferrari miscommunication that's caused that. And there was an interesting image at the end, and if anybody listened to Max Verstappen's comments, he did say that he had a chat with Hamilton.
Yeah, I saw that. If you watch on Sky Sports, he actually goes straight to him, doesn't he? I might not be saying this in the right way, but I feel like Lewis doesn't get on with his race engineer.
I feel like Lewis doesn't get on with anybody at Ferrari.
Yeah, I feel like because and it's like anything in it. Like when it's like for example, I've been in the same job in my life for 20 years, and you know who you learn who you work with and what their skills are and their traits. Now, is it just that Lewis is struggling to adapt to that because he's been with Bono for so long?
Yeah. And everyone else.
And everyone at Mercedes. You know, when he joined them when did he join them? Was it
2010?
2010. So he's had this like hell of a career with the same person. But
2010 was when they came back. Was it 2012? We should check this. We'll check this.
We'll double check on that one. But I just don't feel like he's got the same relationship. Which I understand. It's going to take time to build up. But they just seem to be quite short on the radio.
Yeah, and I think
talk to
the
each
one
other.
thing, me and Phil have had this conversation, not necessarily on an episode, but me and Phil have had this conversation. I think the difficulty for Hamilton is he's gone to Ferrari because he wants that dream scenario of becoming the most successful driver in Formula 1 history and doing it in a Ferrari.
Yeah. And I understand that.
I do
understand.
But I think it's frustrating to him that the car, this weekend has proved, and parts at Imola proved that car's got pace. Yeah. That car can start to fight to win races again this season. And I think it's just...
And I think he can.
Yeah, I do.
I think he can win races.
The two drivers can win races. We know
Big
that.
time.
One's a 7-time world champion.
Big time.
The two drivers can win races. The car is quick enough to win races, or is getting there at least. And it's just these stupid little calls. And again, at a place like Monaco, to receive what they would have known at that point was going to be a penalty. They probably didn't know the severity, as we mentioned at the start. It turned out to be a 3-place grid drop. But they didn't know maybe the severity. But you can't face a penalty at Monaco. No. It's nonsense. And again, if you're not sure, tell him Max is on a flyer. Get Hamilton out the way.
Yeah.
If Max doesn't overtake, 'cause he's not on a flyer. Nothing lost. But the simple fact that they didn't give Hamilton any information whatsoever, they sort of gave him one bit, then took that back and replaced it with something else, which turned out to be false. It's nonsense, and they've absolutely just ruined that for him. So yeah, very, very unfortunate for Hamilton. Verstappen was man enough to accept that wasn't a Hamilton mistake. Absolutely a team one, and you get no sort of disagreement from us. Moving on to Q2. I've already said, you've mentioned it a minute ago, but my first note is shame for Russell. He had obviously a battery fault coming through the tunnel, and had to get pushed through. I actually did quite like the relay of the they had to swap
between
over
the marshals
coming
through the tunnel. I was quite it's very well.
Yeah, it was well drilled. It was very well drilled because obviously they had to get back to their.
Yeah, it's great, really good. But I think that just topped off a weekend for Mercedes in general, really, didn't it?
I mean, it didn't get better. We'll mention it in the race, but it didn't get any better for him there. The Ferrari, my next comment, Ferrari looked very quick.
Yeah, very. Yeah, very quick. It's weird, isn't it? I do feel for Phil, though, because he's not here.
I would have felt for him more if Ferrari would have won.
Well, they're never going to do that with it.
I don't know. Q3 got a little bit spicy
maybe,
towards the end.
I don't know.
And again, next comment, as we said this about the Alpines in Q1, same comment for Q2. My next mediums didn't work for Sainz. So we saw the Alpines didn't do it in Q1. Sainz tried it in Q2 and didn't get anywhere. So it all just seemed...
But they still kept trying.
Then in Q3 someone else tried it.
So the note I got here is Albon P3. I was, but for some reason, as a fan in Britain, it's almost like an unwritten rule, isn't it? It's like you have to.
Oh, we've said this.
Have to. Yeah, I think you have to touch upon it. You have to just. You've just got to sort of keep an eye on Williams and that's where the T-shirt came from.
Yeah, you've got to
keep
Williams.
an eye out.
Yeah, 100%.
And I do think. I mean, I love. I doubt he'll be watching, but James Vowles, I love you.
We keep sending these love messages out, hoping that people will.
Just the way he addresses himself in the media, and he's clearly a stat man. He's clearly a stat man, and he's unbelievable. But I'll come back to James Vowles because I believe at the end of the race there was a little bit of an altercation.
I've made a note on this.
I have seen that. I don't know whether, but. For me personally, I think it's great. I think stuff like that when people are arguing, and I'm not saying like smash each other's faces.
Yeah. But we want to see a little bit.
We want to see a bit of heat and a bit of fire, don't we? I think it just adds to the.
Isaac Hadjar as well was another one that I praised massively in Q2. Yeah. And if anybody who's been watching this channel or listening to the Spotify or watching on YouTube, you'll know me and Phil cannot stop waxing lyrical about Isaac Hadjar. We will have an Isaac Hadjar appreciation moment when we talk about the race because I just think that young lad phenomenal, and he did really well to get again into Q3. As too, in fairness, did Liam Lawson. Now, Yuki Tsunoda must be absolutely fuming. Yeah, no, you've wrote it down. Phil's written
Tsunoda out, Lawson through. So I tried to. So I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law. I'm just, I don't know. It's just a bit. I mean, is it the second Red Bull? It's obviously the second Red Bull curse, and I get that.
I think it's more than that.
But I just think there's
just
more.
Awful.
Yeah, I don't know, but Lawson looks much more comfortable than what he did in the Red Bull. I know he only raced for like 3 races, but he just looks.
Well, there was
more of the Liam Lawson that we saw towards the end of last season.
Yeah. Me and Phil mentioned this. I don't know if it was a Saudi episode or the very, very first episode when we covered Bahrain, where we said that Liam Lawson had said at the time that although the Red Bull is significantly quicker than the RB, and of course it will be, it's just a much more comfortable car to drive. And that was Liam Lawson's comments once he got obviously demoted from Red Bull to RB. Now you could argue that there was a little bit of bitterness almost maybe in this comment, but it's been proved. And the simple fact now is we've seen, me and Phil Brown can't stop praising Isaac Hadjar. We cannot stop praising him. I think he's got an absolute future. I called it. I said Antonelli and Bortoleto would be the two future world champions. Isaac Hadjar absolutely deserves a place now in that argument because what he's doing with a mediocre car. We said this at the end of the Imola episode. Absolutely in with a shout for rookie of the season. I think Antonelli will get the most points. And he should. But absolute shout for rookie of the season, Hadjar. And I know we're only sort of very, very early stages.
And that car, the Racing Bulls is never going to be quicker than the Red Bulls.
No, it's not.
They're never going to allow
but for him to
them
qualify, and both of them, to be fair, for both of them to qualify.
And again, moving into the race, you also saw some pretty good teamwork from them.
And that's where the Isaac Hadjar appreciation moment's going to come in.
Yeah, you saw some really, really good teamwork from them both. And I just think it's answering more questions. In my opinion, it's asking more questions of, is that Red Bull just built for Max Verstappen? And we know I know you talk about it every week, but for one of them to be out in Q2, and Yuki Tsunoda's not a pushover.
No, he's not.
I don't think he's a poor driver, but Max is like fighting for pole. Why are they not both fighting for pole?
Exactly, and that's at least when we had Perez in there, and that's why Phil said at the end of the Imola episode, neither of the drivers that they put in, whether it's Tsunoda or Lawson, are actually as good as the one that they got rid of. You could argue that obviously there's a future with Perez and with Tsunoda and Lawson, and there isn't one with Perez, unfortunately, because of his age. But I
reckon he's on his way back now, don't they?
Yeah, to Cadillac. Yeah, and we haven't actually mentioned Cadillac at all. What does that tell you?
Zips.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no point mentioning it. We know that they're in the sport next year. We don't know who the drivers are. We don't know what the car's going to be like. We'd all just be guessing at this stage. So there's no point in bringing them up. But what a surprise that there's an American team coming in. And that's exactly what Monaco needs, by the way. Two more cars.
Two more cars. An American team.
Anyway,
another American races.
So the end of Q2 then, Sainz was in 11th. Obviously, we mentioned that the medium experiment didn't work for Sainz, for Williams either. Tsunoda was in 12th. Absolutely got to be fuming with that. Absolutely, we touched on it a minute ago. Hulkenberg in 13th once again, just absolutely dragging that Sauber, which we've been hypercritical of. But to be fair, Nico Hulkenberg and Bortoleto to an extent, but nowhere near to the same level, are getting something out of that Sauber. Fair play to Hulkenberg 13th. Russell and Antonelli 14th and 15th.
Their motivation levels to get up and go to work in the morning.
Well, we've touched on it. Yeah,
must be like
the millions.
Oh yeah, the millions in the bank will help, but just. I mean, obviously they're just waiting for Audi to come in, aren't they? That's all they're waiting for. But...
And that's a big thing for the two of them. Hulkenberg's under less pressure because he's been brought in for Audi. Yeah. Bortoleto has also been brought in for Audi, but he's got to at least prove that he can do some stuff this season. And I don't think Sauber will be expecting points off him. Pardon me. I don't think Sauber are expecting the world from him. I think just what they're probably expecting is do something.
Yeah, just
let us know that there's a future there.
Yeah.
And I think he's
fact find almost.
He's probably on the cusp of whether or not he's doing enough.
Tell us what the car's doing. Tell us what the car's not doing.
Yeah,
pass it on to Audi. And
so well done to the Racing Bulls for getting through. But you've also got to consider that neither Mercedes did, and that's the first time in a very, very long time that not even one Merc made it into Q3. So yeah, I've got to consider that when we're praising Racing Bulls. But no, they did, so that's absolutely fine. Q3. I have less notes on this.
It's all right, to be fair.
Because bored. I've got Ferraris look really quick again. So I will praise Ferrari this weekend because we have to have a little bit of balance because Phil Brown's not here. Ferrari did do well. I'll hold my hands up. And I also said the same thing at the end of Imola for anyone who watched.
Do you want to wear the hat?
No.
No,
we don't need to go too far.
No, yeah. I don't,
we need to praise them. We don't need to be stupid.
I'm not going to go too far. Okay. First time excitement.
One thing I will say about quali, because this does give it away, is 2 points that I had. Firstly, Lando Norris needed this weekend.
Oh, 100%.
We spoke about this for a while. Lando Norris absolutely needed Saturday at least. He needed to prove that qualifying. He's been a couple of times recently where qualifying's almost been his
Achilles heel, and he's let himself down, and we've touched on it a couple of times on this series. He's let himself down on the Saturday, which has given himself far too much work to do on the Sunday, and especially at a place like Monaco, that's not work you
I feel
can
like
do.
he's just... there's been moments of the season where you can tell he's put himself under too much pressure.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's putting himself under that pressure as well, and it's just... Whereas Saturday, you take the gloves off and you strip yourself back to... Sometimes that's what you've got to do, and you've got to reset, strip yourself back to basics, and I don't think he's put a foot wrong.
No, Saturday was magnificent. First ever sub 70-second lap at Monaco as well.
Lap record?
Yeah, so, fair play to Lando Norris.
That is...
In Charles Leclerc's defence, he was only a couple of tenths slower than him, so Charles would have probably set this lap record as well.
Fast.
But yeah, no, Lando was... And the other thing is as well, which is... Because this is going to contradict everything that we previously said on this series, and probably the majority of Formula 1 fans out there are saying, is Lando was magnificent in qualifying. You can't take that away from him. And Oscar looked wobbly.
Yeah, I think if you compare it to previous sessions, I don't think Oscar's had a really good weekend. Really.
Piastri didn't have the best weekend. I think he'll admit that.
Because I think didn't he hit the wall in in P3 was it? Practice 3. I think he
a couple of close shaves as well, where the back end was just
he was hitting the wall, and
I'm not sure if his setup was
struggling. I said setup.
Yeah.
I said he's struggling with his setup a little bit.
But yeah, Piastri didn't look on it. That being said, he's still leading the World Championship going into the race, and he qualified third. So we're saying he's not on it. It's not a bad effort by any stretch.
Absolutely not.
But they're going to be the fine margins this season, aren't they? Between 100%. Because it's that close.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's a nice problem for McLaren, isn't it? But just got to...
And I still think they're managing it well. We'll go on that when we go on the race, but I still think they're managing stuff well. Okay, so unless you've got anything else,
I think that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah. It wasn't a fantastic Q3.
No, there's not much. I think your biggest shocks from qualifying is obviously the two Mercedes not making through Q2, the two Racing Bulls. I won't say it was a shock. It was, you've just said consider the Mercedes, but no, it was great.
Good session.
It was all right, but it's just it does need improvement.
We'll touch on that.
We'll come to that in the next episode, and we'll.
So Q3, sorry, Phil, sorry to interrupt. Okay. Q3, just to wrap up. Norris pole. Verstappen managed to put it in second. Sorry, no, he didn't. Leclerc put it in second. My apologies. Was actually again Ferraris were quick. He did really well. Piastri third. Hamilton did qualify fourth on the road, but as we mentioned earlier, he got that 3-place grid penalty for impeding Verstappen. So he was demoted down to 7th. That then promoted Verstappen from 5th to 4th. Hadjar, again, what a man. Promoted from 6th to 5th. Alonso, again, to be fair, actually pulling that green wheelie bin around and doing something with it. He was promoted from 7th to 6th. Ocon got himself in 8th. And again, Ocon 8th, Lawson 9th, and Albon 10th. Albon, sorry, I will touch on this quickly. Ocon, brilliant. Again, we keep saying that those Haas's are doing a lot more than they probably should. So fair play to Haas. Fair play to Esteban Ocon as well for getting it in 8th, especially when we did say a minute ago Behrman had a bit of a disastrous Saturday. Lawson, again, magnificent for him to get into Q3. You do have to caveat that a little bit, and I'm not being harsh to Liam Lawson, but with the two Mercedes being out, would that have been a Q3 if they were actually where they should be? But fair play to Liam Lawson, especially at a place like Monaco, you've got to roll with the punches. And Alex Albon, qualified 10th on mediums. Why was nobody paying attention to the fact that the mediums weren't working? The worst thing with Albon as well doing it in Q3 is your own teammate did it in Q2 and didn't get through. What more? We will praise Williams and we will continue to when we talk about the race. But what more evidence do you need? Your teammate just proved it doesn't work. But yeah, anyway.
I don't know what the teams were hoping
unless
out
they're saving it for the race because
but what they were hoping out for, whatever they were hoping out for, it wasn't working.
It just didn't work.
Oh, it's great.
So that is our roundup on Saturday. So if you stick around, if you're on Spotify, stick around. We'll be back in just one moment to go through the race. If you're on YouTube, please go to the video where we'll discuss the race. Bring Red Bull, bring Pro Plus, bring coffee, bring whatever you can, because it's going to be a slog.